But a lot of people moving here, right? Maybe they don't understand how sensitive our water service is. I mean, looking at these pictures, it's amazing how much we were sucking out of the ground and out of the wetlands and out of the lakes. Yeah, scroll down, David. Look at this. I mean, some dramatic photos. Pretty crazy. So where does our water come from, everybody? So today I've got Tampa Bay Water here. We've got Amelia Brown. Yeah, you guys can wear headphones or not. Totally up to you. She is the Demand Management Program Manager, which again is like education for people, how to save water. We'll talk about all that. And then Warren Hogg, who's the Chief Science Officer for Tampa Bay Water. And Warren, you've been in this entity or organization as it's switched courses for over 30 years.
Yeah, I started as an intern doing part-time work in January of '87.
Wow, you started off as an intern?
Yeah, I was working on my master's degree at USF.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Was that a kind of a dream role for you at the time to work at I guess back then it wasn't technically a public utility, right?
It was. We serve the public, supplying water to our member governments. It wasn't really a dream job. It was a good job for a short time for a hungry graduate student. And over time, I realized that this is exactly where I want to be.
Amazing. And about 10 years after you joined as an intern is when everything shifted from what was the previous entity to Tampa Bay Water?
It was the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority.
And as an intern, what were you working on initially?
I was doing data entry for one of our very early water conservation studies. How much water is needed for irrigation in a yard? We'd put soil tensiometers in and record data, and the staff that was working on that had no time to do their own data analysis and inputs, so they hired me to do that.
We've kind of artificially created this demand for irrigation here in Florida. Like I see old photos, historical photos of our area, and you don't have the huge oak trees everywhere. You don't have St. Augustine grass everywhere. It was like sandy pine trees, salt palmetto, more arid, really. I mean, from when you look at the plants, right? More arid plants versus now everybody's got the green yard and these different tropical plants and the oak trees everywhere. Like we probably have created our own demand for this much water. How much water currently do we use like on a daily basis with Tampa Bay Water?
Last year, we supplied an average of 200 million gallons a day to our members. They in turn serves 2.6 million people with that water.
That is so bananas. So billions of gallons a year, billions and billions.
Billions.
That is incredible. And we were talking about population too, right? Like one of the factors in all of this is that we just simply have a ton more people living in Florida. 10 million since 1990 at least. And I think it was, what was the number? Like at least a million to our region.
1.5.
1.5 million to our region in that same time frame. So this unbelievable demand because there's more people, but also people want to have green lawns and long showers and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to start kind of at the beginning. And Amelia, you can kind of chime in where you feel like it. But this whole thing, right? Supplying this region of a couple million people with water didn't look the way it looks currently. There was a previous entity, and in this documentary I looked at, they don't describe it as a true utility. Like that's why I said, was it a utility? So talk to me about what that entity was early on.
The West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority was enabled by the legislature in 1974, came into being in 1976 to develop water supplies for its member governments. At that point, we had Tampa, St. Pete, Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas County. Newport Richey was a member, but they didn't have a vote on our board. Each of those utilities, each of those governments had their own water, but they needed to grow, so we were hired to produce the water that they needed. But each project that we built, each member would have to subscribe to it. So the very early well fields, like St. Petersburg's oldest well field was Cosme Odessa in 1930, that was essentially paid for. That was very cheap water. As we get into the 80s, we're building new well fields and infrastructure. That becomes very expensive water. So there's a lot of contention with the members because they wanted the least expensive water for their customers.
Right. And at that time, this water is being used for all the above. I mean, whether it's golf courses or people's homes, everything, right?
Right.
And I'm trying to think, like in the 80s, there's always been real estate booms in Florida, but there was a lot of stuff being built in that 60s, 70s era. I think there was a downturn in the 80s, wasn't there? And then it was kind of right back up again.
It wasn't long before it ticked back up again. We
Yeah.
have cycles that go down for about 2 years at a time, and they immediately reverse and go back up.
Yeah. And so it sounds like a lot of the water was primarily from the aquifer, whereas today maybe we do it
Mhm.
from, the Hillsborough River.
Yeah, the city of Tampa has always used the Hillsborough River for the majority of their water supply, but all the other members used water from the ground, from the aquifer,
Mm.
from the well fields they or we developed for them. It wasn't, and that was part of the problem. We were focused on just that one source. We had a time in the mid 90s with an unprecedented multi year drought. We had the water management district had over permitted the water we could take from the aquifer, and we were pumping it. And we had massive environmental consequences. Lakes and wetlands went completely dry. Got us into the water wars. We had members fighting with each other, with us, with the regulator, SwiftMud, and it just became an untenable position. We weren't developing any new water supply, and the region was growing at that time, and we needed a solution.
Wow. And so describe some of those wars, right? I mean, is it like one municipality has a lot of growth and they need extra water, but a different municipality says, no, this is ours, we need it for
Mhm.
our, and then the lawyers get together and,
Yeah, it was essentially the agency was trying to represent all of our members and supply water to them. But you had Pasco County, where the big well fields were located. Hillsborough County had some of the well fields. They said, no, this water is harming our environment. We need that water to stay. And you had the coastal communities saying, we don't have another source. The groundwater under Pinellas County largely salted up. They had to move inland. So they had water demands that had to be met, and it put litigation between individual members. It was pretty much split three on a side, with us in the middle and SwiftMud in the middle.
jeez.
And it was just a very expensive tangle. I think we spent about $10 million in that last iteration of the water wars, and it was essentially a stalemate.
Yeah. And that's not good for anybody. I
Right.
mean, especially when you talk about a public utility like that. And so when you say these wells dried up and salt water would come in, like what's the science behind that? How does this all work? That
Um,
particular
yeah,
technology.
St. Petersburg had some very shallow wells back in the early 1900s, and actually Mirror Lake in downtown St. Pete was their reservoir. They pulled water out of the lake, they pulled water out of the shallow wells, but as you pull the fresh water out, the salt water from the bay comes into the aquifer and backfills that space. So over time, they saw that salting up so that the water wasn't drinkable. They had to go further and further inland to get a water supply.
Wow. And was that the first iteration of technology here in Florida in the early 1900s? There was this massive real estate boom. Like that's when Davis Islands was built, right in the 1920s. Was that the primary technology back then was wells, right?
Wells, or in the city of Tampa, the Hillsborough River. The city's been using the river since 19 teens or 1920s when the dam was first built. The city had wells in downtown Tampa until they salted up too.
Mm. And once they salt up, can you desalt them?
Naturally, it takes lifetimes for the aquifer to flush itself back out, but you have to stop basically all pumping from it to let the rainwater filter in and push the salt water back out. That's decades or hundreds of years.
So it's not feasible to
No,
dry them out, let them fill, and then let
no.
them naturally go back. Wow. And is that dangerous for the environment in any way besides like, well, human beings can't get their water from that source?
There's really nothing living underground, so it's not harmful to the aquifer. through geologic time, it's been freshwater, saltwater, fresh, salt, back and forth.
Right.
So that's not a harm to the aquifer. It's just that it's not usable for drinking water purposes. You can't use it for irrigating your crops if you're a farmer.
But it doesn't produce like sinkholes or anything like that.
The saltwater intrusion doesn't, but if you pull too much out of a well or a well field all of a sudden, it can. Like in 2010, we had the historic freeze, and all the strawberry farmers in Plant City had to turn on all their wells to save their crops, or their whole economy would have crashed. The water level in the limestone aquifer dropped about 80 feet in a couple days, and about 70 sinkholes popped.
Wow.
One of them was under I-4. They had to close down part of the interstate until they could rebuild it.
Wow. And so it mitigates risk to pull water from different sources then, right? If our entire system was dependent exclusively on these aquifers, I mean, even like this year was, knock on wood, it's been an exceptionally dry year, right? Including storms. And if we all get our water from the aquifer and we keep using, it's not like the water demand slows. I mean, in droughts, it actually increases, right? People need
Right.
to water their lawns, etc. Boy, you'd have sinkholes popping up all over.
The sinkholes tend to form when you pump a lot of water really fast. If it comes in over time, if you've built up a pumping level and sustain it, that really doesn't produce sinkholes. It's the immediate. But the example I gave you, the strawberry farmers had to pump. It was estimated that they pumped about 800 million gallons a day to save their crops. They had no choice.
800 million gallons a day. So they pumped more than this entire Tampa Bay water. I mean, that's, what'd you say, 200 million per day is
That's
about
what
the
we delivered
average.
on average last year.
So an insane amount these strawberry farmers had to pump out of the ground. Wow, that is crazy. And so you have these challenges, right? And Tampa Bay Water pops up. Whose idea was Tampa Bay Water? Like, what was the genesis of this organization? I mean, obviously there was challenges, there's lawsuits, $10 million spent on litigation for basically a stalemate. Did the state government come in and say, hey, you guys need to figure this out?
It was a combination. We had just come through all of that litigation. It was essentially a stalemate. The administrative court said, no, you can continue to pump the water because you need it to supply demand. You can't cut it back just for the environment because people have moved here and they need water. But it does cause a harm. So we were in a stalemate again. The business community was saying, look, we're growing in this region, and if we don't have water, we can't grow, so you guys need to fix this. We convened what we called a group of 18. We have 6 members, so we had 3 people from each utility, had a government. We had an elected official, a utility director, and an attorney. And they, with our staff, sat down to decide how can we rebuild this. The state legislator was applying some pressure and said, look, you guys need to fix this because you could harm the local economy. Fix it or we'll come down and do it for you. There's a lot of reasons for us to figure this out ourselves.
And when the state says we'll do it for you, what's so bad about that, right? Wouldn't it be nice to just pass off some of the politics and the lawyers and the organization at the state level?
It sounds easier, but we know our region. We know the local economy. We know our facilities. We know our customers. So it would work best if we decided how we can reform to fix it ourselves, since we have the firsthand knowledge. Somebody from the outside could come up with a solution, but would it be an effective one?
And represent the constituency, right? The business
Exactly.
interests, the public, et cetera.
And the environment.
And the environment. And so this group is formed, and how long did it take to get through the process to form Tampa Bay Water?
Almost 2 years.
Wow.
And that was at least monthly meetings and discussions. Individuals from the group would go back to their local governments and have internal discussions. Work continued for about 2 years from 1996, 95, 96, when the last litigation ended, until we reformed on June 10 of 1998.
Wow. And so at that point, you started off as an intern in the late 80s. Now you're 10 years in. What was your role when Tampa Bay Water was formed?
I had been a hydrogeologist. Groundwater geology is my background. And since 1994, I had been the water use permitting manager. So I was in charge of the water use permits for the well fields, the environmental monitoring, and assessing the health of the environment.
Got it. And at that time, under your position, did that capture like if I just own a house and wanted to put a well in, or this was larger public works
It's
projects?
larger public works. Individual wells are governed by the Water Management District. If you have a well for your house, there's a well construction permit that a driller would have to get from them to install it.
Yeah, because you would imagine, when you talk about somebody's home or if someone owns a few acres of land and they have a well, maybe it's not a big deal. But when you talk about 2.5, 3 million people who all want a well, now it starts to add up. So
Mhm.
your relationship, I'm assuming, was with that entity, that state organization that would give those permits out. How many permits are you giving out, et cetera? And
Mhm.
then using that information on what you guys are sucking up out of the ground and figure out where you can permit, where you can't,
Yeah,
essentially.
by comparison, what we were taking out of a single well field dwarfed anything that the local citizens could pull out. Our most northern well field is the Crossbar Ranch well field. It was permitted for and actually produced about 30 million gallons per day.
Wow.
And if you had 30 million homes around it, each using water, they wouldn't even come close to the quantity that we're pulling out of a single well field. And
Wow.
there aren't that many people around that well field.
Right. Wow. That's nuts. And most people that do a well, they're doing it for irrigation in their yard, typically, I would assume.
They would do it for use inside the house and for irrigation if they want to put it on their landscape.
I guess in the city, you'd probably do it for your landscape. Like around here, you're not going to disconnect from the
Right.
the
No.
water grid. Wow. So Tampa Bay Water is formed. It takes 2 years, and at the end of it, I'm assuming there's this huge relief, right? Like this is years of legal battles, and I was looking up some of the
Mhm.
press at the time. It was really heated.
It
Like,
was brutal.
yeah, brutal. And at the end of it, was there a satisfaction?
Well, there was, but then we had to get busy. We reformed into Tampa Bay Water. We formed a brand new true utility in order to end the litigation, which we did, to cut back our groundwater pumping so the environment could recover, and to build new alternative sources to groundwater to meet the demand at that time and all future demands. So we had a lot to do. We started into our first iteration of regional project construction. We built 2 intakes on local rivers, on the Tampa Bypass Canal and the Alafaya River. We built a 15.5 billion gallon reservoir south of Lithia. We built a desalination plant and dozens, tens upon tens of miles of large diameter pipe. When I say large diameter pipe, I mean the biggest part of our trunk line is 84-inch inside diameter.
Whoa. That
You,
moves some serious water.
that's where the 200 million gallons a day can flow.
And so slide 8, is this the Lithia reservoir here on the top left?
That's the C.W. Bill Young Regional Reservoir,
Sheesh.
named after C.W. Bill Young, who was instrumental in getting us federal funding to help us build that. That's a 1,000 acre footprint. It's about 70, 85 feet deep at the deep end, and it will hold water from the Alafaya River and the Tampa Bypass Canal. When they're flowing good in the summer, we store water there for use in the dry season. That's our bank account. We save water here to use later.
Wow. And how much water does this reservoir hold?
Over 15 billion gallons.
15 billion gallons, and we use an average of 200 million a day.
Yes.
Wow. So we could be good for quite a while with this bank, but not forever.
Not forever. We do draw it down during the spring and early summer when it's not raining, it's hot, dry, people are using water, but we can refill it virtually every summer. That's how dynamic our system is. This is the power of diversifying our supplies.
And being this regional entity, right, that represents so many millions of people, so many stakeholders, everyone has this vested interest in keeping all this stuff moving and operating in a proper manner,
Yes.
which you didn't have before.
We didn't. We have had no water litigation between the member governments since 1996.
Is that a rarity in other regions across Florida and the country?
We can, and others have called us a model for regional cooperation in Florida or the nation. We came together to solve problems. We came up with an effective solution, and we've maintained it for 30 years now.
Sounds like we should take other regional issues and do the same thing, right? Like regarding transportation or some of these other problems we have, get together, figure it out. Even if it takes 2 years, here we are. I guess it's 20 years or more down the road, and it's still successful, still works for us.
The other piece about our true utility is we got away from that old concept of each facility had its own cost of water. Our 6 members agreed to blend everything. So no matter where the water comes from, each member pays exactly the same rate for water. We call it our uniform water rate. Now there's no competition for cheap water. It all costs the same.
And when you have competition for cheap water, is one of the negative externalities that you'll try to, get people to escape permits or over permit, like some of the issues you had before?
Governments would pump up to what they were authorized to pump, and the environment had a consequence. The pictures you showed were part of that consequence.
And let's run through, whoa, this is crazy, David. So David's going back in time on the satellite view. And so a part of Tampa Bay Water was, I'm assuming, like purchasing land like this. What was the initial investment in Tampa Bay Water to do all of this infrastructure work? Do you have that number?
Individually, no, but since we reformed, we've spent about $2 billion in our infrastructure.
Wow.
Back in the day, Mayor Fisher was from St. Petersburg, was our board chairman. And he asked our staff when we were building all of this massive infrastructure to report to the board every month on what we were spending. And back in 1999, 2000, we were spending over $1 million per day on construction. And he was giddy. He celebrated the fact that we were able to spend that kind of money under a stable financial structure, develop new supplies for the region, and restore the environment.
Wow.
Our board celebrated that expense.
So an amazing undertaking, massive capital cost, but clearly it's paid off because we haven't had challenges in decades.
Absolutely. And the environment is fully recovered from what it was.
Let's show the environment too, David, because some of these slides here that you've sent me are really shocking. Some of the pictures are describing like tens of feet of water level restoration in some of these lakes.
If you look at Starvation Lake there, that's at Lake Park up on Del Mabry and Van Dyke in northwest Hillsborough County. That's the main lake that's behind the water treatment plant. It's public access. People can put in their boats and canoes. But back in about 1998, that would have been tough. You had to go down the boat ramp, hike over sand to find the water. And the lake had actually split into 2 pools. That's probably 2016, 2017, the water level in the lake had risen over 16 feet. You can't see the boat ramp there, but it's there. It's just under the water surface. Even the edges of the boat ramp are covered.
Holy smokes. And then you've got all the wildlife coming back and all the great things that come with that restoration. And again, the reason is because the variety of sources, right? It's not just relying on groundwater. And so because it doesn't exclusively rely on groundwater and you get it from other sources, these lakes have the time to fill back up, right?
There were 10 well fields that we had lumped together as our consolidated permit. At their maximum, they produced 160 million gallons per day. We volunteered to cut that down to less than 90.
Wow.
And in these pictures, and most years, we're averaging 80. So we voluntarily cut our groundwater pumping in half to protect and restore the environment. And the water management district gave us significant dollars, I think over the years, about $400 million of local tax revenue to build some of these big alternative water supplies so we could continue to meet that common goal.
I did want to go back to cost and talk about, who paid for that and how all of that worked. Obviously, water's not free, even at an individual level. We all get a water bill. Businesses, this building gets a water bill. But how is something like this initially funded when you have what did you say, $2.2 billion worth of infrastructure
Yeah, about
work?
$2 billion over time. All of Tampa Bay Water's money comes from the sale of water. We're a wholesale entity. We charge no profit. We just have an annual budget that covers our expenses each year. So the water that the public uses is what's paid to us through the members. We do get some funding from the state through the Water Management District or DEP, and in some cases from the federal government, like Congressman Bill Young got some federal funding for us to help with the reservoir. But essentially, this is funded by water rates, wholesale water rates. We go to Wall Street, we sell utility bonds to finance it, and we structure that so that we have a very stable rate over time.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't call any of this easy, but the more simple thing about this, finding these sources of water and paying for the infrastructure, is that the individual pays the utility bill. And so because you have that income stream, you can leverage that for large loans, like you said, bonds and stuff to fund these projects.
We have a very strong bond rating at Wall Street, and that's because of our structure. We do carry a lot of debt because we built some really big stuff. But when Wall Street looks at our bonds, they go, you're stable, you've got a guaranteed payback, you get really good ratings.
Yeah. And Amelia, let me bring you in for a second too, because clearly we were in very challenging times 25, 30 years ago, where you've got these environmental concerns, you've got fighting between local governments, all this sort of stuff. Now it's almost like we're not even using the full capacity we could, right? It's like we've found a way to kind of shrink and build efficiencies within these systems to where the environment's happy, the people are happy. It seems like everything's going more smooth. And your role is to even deepen that, right? Like further save as much water as we can. But my first question to you is, why would that be necessary if it seems like solutions have been met? Like, why do we always have to save water, save water, save water?
Well, so we have all the water that we need for today, but when we look to the future, we do estimations about what that population growth will look like, what those water demands are going to look like. And as we look out to the future through our planning process, we're going to need substantially more water in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
So several years ago, the agency started looking at where we were headed as a region in terms of the population and the existing water sources, and realized that water conservation can play a very helpful role in these future scenarios. Because every gallon of water that we don't need 10 years from now means we don't have to develop that new water supply.
Right.
So bringing down the demands helps to, reduce future demands. That's less water that we need to develop. An important part of that is that the cost of water conservation is really favorable compared to the cost of new water supply development.
And there's a huge scale to this whole thing too, right? Like, maybe, so it's around 3 million people that Tampa Bay Water serves, right? Something like
2.6,
that.
yeah.
2.6. If everybody just saved 1 gallon a day, right? Like it's exponential.
Yeah.
And so with education and some of the stuff we'll talk about, you can probably move the needle pretty well on water conservation just with habits, technology. I know the city of
Absolutely.
Tampa has like a specific watering day. You're not allowed to water on particular days. If we can all get behind that, right, we can save a ton of water. But let's talk about some of the ways we can do that, right? So first of all, use less is hard to tell people, right? And from what I can tell, the emphasis is not from your department like, hey, take, shorter showers, right? It seems like there's technology, there's tools, there's different equipment. Something as simple as getting your sprinklers adjusted can have dramatic impacts. But what are some of those ways people can save water?
Yeah, so probably the most important area to focus on is looking at how much water we use outdoors. And, if you're a homeowner or a business, paying attention to your sprinkler system. So, to put the volume of water use in context, a single person uses about 1,000 gallons per month just for their indoor needs, showering, cleaning, cooking, etc., in the home. An irrigation system typically uses that same amount of water, 1,000 gallons, each time it runs. And so folks who are watering once a week, and they've got a family of four, half of their water use is being used to water their grass. And it's easy for that, for a homeowner or a business to accidentally be using way more than is really needed by the plants. So that is really the first area to look at in terms of what's being used. And there's some really simple techniques. So first, all irrigation systems pretty much have a controller. Some of them are simple. They're a timer, and it just says, okay, it's Tuesday at 3 a.m., time to water. But, sometimes programming those controllers can be a little tricky, and
Yeah.
some folks might need some help. They may not realize that actually it's running the cycle 3 times in the
Right.
middle of the night
Yep.
because they're not up at 3 a.m. on Tuesday. And making sure you have a rain sensor connected to your controller, or even better, a weather-based irrigation controller to make sure that if it's raining or if it's recently rained, you're not also watering on top of it. You can let nature, do that for you and save the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, that's so frustrating when you drive by like a huge strip center and it's pouring rain and the sprinklers are on. You're like, oh my God,
It kills me.
what a waste, right? So how is your office doing that? Is it purely education, or do you have people that actually come out and like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this? Like how close can you get to the people besides just telling them to use less water?
Yeah, we have a couple primary methods. So I manage what's called the Tampa Bay WaterWise program. It is a rebate program. So we actually give people money, residents, businesses, whoever can save some water, we have some dollars to put to it. So that helps to pay for the upfront cost, whether you're talking about a new, more high efficiency toilet, or making changes to your sprinkler system, or any of the other myriad ways that businesses might be using water. We have rebate dollars to help homeowners, businesses, and apartment buildings reduce their water use.
This episode is brought to you by the official remodeler of the TBD podcast, Kohler House Remodeling Company. Built on the belief that every homeowner deserves a premium experience, Kohler House is redefining high-end home remodeling with their commitment to integrity, craftsmanship, and quality communication. Their work speaks for itself, from condos in the towers of Channelside to 100-year-old homes in South Tampa, creating spaces that are both stunning and functional. What sets Kohler House Remodeling Company apart is their dedication to not only transforming homes into beautiful spaces, but to elevating the standard of residential general contracting. From concept to completion, every detail is handled with care, ensuring a process that's as smooth as the results are impressive. To learn more, check out our partner's website at kohlerhouse.net, KOHLERHAUS.net. This episode is sponsored by Chansey Architecture and Interior Design. Rooted in the heart of Ybor City for over 35 years, Walt Chansey and his team are trailblazers in their field. Beyond their work across the United States and the Bahamas, Chansey has shaped some of the most iconic residential and commercial spaces that serve as gateways to Cigar City, including Casa Marti and Casa Gomez. What sets Chansey Design apart is their ability to preserve the soul and character of historic buildings while seamlessly integrating modern design and functionality. They blend tradition with innovation, creating spaces that honor the past while meeting today's needs. Check out their work at www.chanseydesign.com. This is actually pretty cool. So, David, if you go to tampabaywaterwise.org, tampabaywaterwise.org, there's a shallow well up to $1,000 rebate. So I don't have the qualifications here in front of me, but what, you put a well in to irrigate your yard and I could get $1,000?
Yeah, so there are some eligibility criteria, but homeowners can get $1,000 toward that shallow well. And that shallow well is going to completely replace the drinking water that they'd been using on their lawn. So we talked about how many thousands of gallons that can be a month. That's easily 4,000 to 15,000 gallons per month. And so those customers will see their water bills drop dramatically. by using these shallow wells, which is appropriate for, I think, like you were mentioning earlier, in urban areas in
Sure.
Tampa. These only go 15, 20 feet deep.
And these, you're not paying per gallon. You're paying the upfront cost of the well. You potentially get up to $1,000 rebate. And then you're just paying what, the electricity of the well itself, but you're not paying per gallon.
That's right. And there's going to be some maintenance, but no, you do not pay per gallon for the irrigation. You still, of course, have your drinking water sent indoors to your house. The shallow well is only meant for irrigation water.
Dang, and you've got some commercial stuff on here too, right? For businesses and organizations, restaurants, hotels, office buildings, etc. Yeah, we're definitely going to look into this. And then multifamily owner too, rebates up to $40,000.
Sure. And to be honest, it can go larger. So, we've helped out a lot of apartment buildings change out all their old fixtures in the bathrooms. So we're talking the toilet, the shower head, the aerator. And the water savings are absolutely incredible. It's actually our most successful program in the rebate program, saving a lot more water than even we anticipated. The ROI for some of these property owners is under 6 months in a lot of cases because of not only the rebate that helps to pay for the upfront costs, but their water bills drop in half sometimes. And the payback on it is really quick.
Yeah, we've got a medical tenant up in Seminole Heights, and we had a little bit of a negotiation there because it was like, well, who's going to take care of this irrigation, right? And we ended up taking the expense, but it's like at least $5,000 a year, $4,000 or $5,000 a year to consistently keep that grass and all those plants green, and we don't have a well. This is a perfect scenario. I should like go through the process and like record it and put it out there so people can watch me work through it. That might be kind of interesting, right? This is crazy. I mean, this is a lot of money. If you could get, because the biggest expense is the well. Like the well itself is thousands of dollars
A few
to
thousand
put in,
dollars
right?
for a single family home, yeah.
For a single family home. And if you can get $1,000 of that, I mean, that's a huge incentive.
Yeah,
This is sweet.
especially for homeowners that are have a larger area and are using more water. The payback is really favorable for that. And there are some qualifications that are required in terms of location and the volume of water use.
Sure.
But we allow customers to look up whether they're eligible or ask to be reviewed.
$40,000 would be like for a huge, 200-unit multifamily building or something like that has a big yard or whatever.
Yeah, to be honest, we've definitely issued rebates larger than that for some
What's the
really
largest
large
rebate?
buildings. Oh, probably 60,000, I think. Wow. But it's all proportionate to the volume of water saved. So,
Sure.
we monitor carefully, what are the projected savings. We actually also look at the actual savings from all of the rebates that we issue. So whether it's a toilet in someone's house or, a 500-unit apartment building, we look at the water use before and after to measure the volume of water saved.
Does an apartment complex and all, commercial properties, homeowner rebates, do all of these incentives make my water bill go down because we're using less water as a region?
Collectively as a region. Yeah. So it really, it'll of course impact that individual
Sure.
water bill, but it does contribute to the greater picture here, right? Because I was talking about how the water we save now means we don't have to go and build new supplies to serve that, unit of
That
water
infrastructure
in the
cost.
future. So just to give you some sense of scale here, this rebate program to date has saved almost 1 million gallons per day. And we're looking at new supply projects that are, could provide anywhere from 4 to 15 or more million gallons per day. The goal of this program is to save, 3 to 4 million gallons per day by 2030, at which point we're talking about a volume of water saved that's comparable to one of the new supply projects that we're currently evaluating.
Which means we don't have to spend $50 million, $100 million building out new infrastructure to provide that water.
That's right.
Amazing. And they've got a lot of stuff on here for those listening. I mean, you have rebates for fixtures, toilets, urinals, hotel, motel, different shower heads. Like there's some really, really interesting things in here. And even like water usage for the sprinkler system, high efficiency toilets you can get rebates for. So definitely check this out, tampabaywaterwise.org. Really, really interesting program.
And we change that over time. You're always looking for new ideas and new ways to save water.
Absolutely. Our business customers most often use our customizable rebate because that's really flexible. That's really just a conversation of what do you want to do and how do you want to save water? Let's figure out how much it is and we can put a dollar amount to it. Because it's not always so uniform like it is in a home. In a
Right.
home, there's some very regular uses of water. In the business environment and also in outdoor landscapes, there can be a lot of variability regarding how to save the most water and what a property owner is going to do.
So how do you handle some of these huge projects? So we talk about these projects all the time on this show, right? Tampa Bay developer. We talk about all these big developments like Gasworks, 7,500 new residents, a hotel, all these different things they've got planned for the future. Is there a conversation with them at the onset of the project where they could potentially save a ton of money by tweaking certain things and ways they receive water to this massive project? I mean, we're picking on
Yeah.
this one in particular, but in general, right? Water Street, all these huge projects.
Yeah, we are increasingly working with new construction projects. So we do have kind of a couple options at the moment, although we're open to new ideas too. So we have rebates for homes and other buildings that achieve the Florida Water Star certification. So what that is, it's you can kind of think of it as a checklist of indoor efficiency techniques and outdoor efficiency in the landscape and in the irrigation system. And it gets inspected and certified, and if all the boxes are checked, then they'd be eligible for a rebate. And that rebate helps to offset any additional cost to achieve that extra efficiency compared to how a standard new construction would be developed. And that is a program that's increasingly popular amongst several communities, especially if you look to Polk County, right next to Hillsborough. There are a dozen or so local communities in the county who have adopted Florida Water Star as an ordinance or elements of the Florida Water Star standards as part of their requirements for new construction.
And you're speaking to maybe like these new home communities way out in East Hillsborough County, stuff like that, right? Where they come in with this fresh new perspective about their whole development and they can kind of get those qualifications early on.
That's right.
Yeah.
They can choose to pursue, this Florida Water Star certification, which has benefits to the homeowners. They have lower bills, and obviously has benefits to the region in terms of reducing water use from that, new development.
And we're going to have to find every way we can to save water just because when you drive out in the East County, it's unbelievable. You can't ignore the amount of development and the amount of homes and the amount of people moving to this region. It's like, and I would assume to get water out there is way more expensive than if you build a new house right over here in the city, right? I mean, to get all that water out that way, that's going to cost a ton. So if they can save water, maybe you don't have to build that new system, right? David, can you go to is it numbered? Page 9. And it talks about potential new projects. And there's this map of the region. And you've mentioned 3 counties, Warren. It's Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco. Those are the counties that are served by Tampa Bay Water. Are there any carve-outs at all, or is it any residence or business in that county gets their water from Tampa Bay Water?
Well, they have to be served by one of those governments. So if you get your utility bill from Hillsborough County, you're part of those numbers we're talking about. If you're on the very far edge, south or east of Hillsborough County, you're a rural community. You probably have a domestic well. You're not paying a bill. There are some carve-outs. Plant City has their own water supply. Temple Terrace, Newport Richey has some, Clearwater, and some of the small coastal communities.
Temple Terrace, really?
Temple Terrace has their own permit and their own treatment system.
And does that mean they're completely on the outside of Tampa Bay Water?
They are. They have about 3 to 4 million gallons a day of their own supply.
And so, 25 years ago when Tampa Bay Water was being formed, they were like, hey, we're good. Like, we don't want to be a part of this, basically.
Yeah. And the really cool thing about how we reformed is we have 3 counties, 3 major cities, so we have equal representation now. We have 2 officials from the county and one from the city that's in that county, Pasco, Newport Richey, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, Hillsborough, and Tampa. So we have an equal representation on our board of elected officials.
Wow, yeah. And was there any argument against doing it with equal representation or equal cost? Because obviously Hillsborough has a lot more people than Pasco.
They do now. They may not in the future.
Oh my gosh, that's a scary thought.
We do long-range population and water demand forecasting, and the forecaster by 2055, Pasco County will have as many or more single-family homes than Southern Hillsborough County.
And so what kind of numbers are we talking about here? Because Hillsborough County has about 1.5 million people. So we're thinking Pasco could also have, well, you said single family, not population.
Single family, not population. But as Amelia was talking about, so much of the water is used outdoors for irrigation on a single family home with a very Florida-esque landscape.
Yeah.
That's a lot of water.
I said that earlier, where it's like this Florida-esque landscape. It's native, certainly, but it's not natural to our environment to have the yards we have. And I wonder where that popped up and why it popped up. Because you look at old photos of the sandy dunes and the pine trees. I mean, it's beautiful and completely natural. And I guarantee it doesn't use as much water as a St. Augustine lawn.
Yeah. You have to go to places like the Starkey Nature Preserve, which is one of our well fields, to really see old Florida. Yeah. You can get back to nature. You can see those pine flatwoods with isolated wetlands in them. That was our natural landscape over much of the area.
David, I know you're a little busy right now, but can you pull up on Instagram? Real Tampa just posted a photo on Columbus Drive looking west, in like Tampa Heights area. You could kind of see down to the river. In the landscape, there's not one oak tree. You can kind of see the sand. So my whole point in all this is like, you're going to have more single family homes in Pasco than there are now in Hillsborough in 2055. And by then, are we really all still going to want that St. Augustine grass? I mean, is a part of your education at all to give people alternative landscaping solutions that don't require a well or 1,000 gallons a day?
It is. It is kind of interesting how I think the entire country just loves a green lawn.
Yeah.
And this is an issue not only here in Florida, but in other regions of the country that are, way more arid. So Tampa Bay Water has supported the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program for over 2 decades. And so this is a University of Florida extension program, but they work with the counties. So there are staff in each of these 3 counties, Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough, who are there to educate residents and businesses about how to have a healthier and more Florida-friendly landscape. So what that means is it really comes down to plant selection. It could be a native plant, but there are several plant types that are well adapted to our climate and can still thrive with less water, less fertilizer. I think these plants are really interesting looking, and they add a lot of texture and beauty to a landscape as compared to sort of the monoculture of grass, just sort of the same plant everywhere. And they can also provide habitat for pollinators, so really actively contributing to environmental benefits.
Yeah, it's interesting how kind of we all love that green lawn. I mean, I have a green lawn. I bought my house a year ago, right? But certainly looking at all these old photos. Did you find it, David? Real Tampa. Here, pull it up. Let me try to look for it. Yeah, it's interesting how we kind of all just have accepted that. And like, I bought my house last year, and it's expensive. If you're going to tear up your front and backyard, it's going to cost you probably tens of thousands of dollars to get that done. And so for me right now in my life, I'm like, well, just kind of keep the sprinklers on and keep it going. But I think rethinking in the future, maybe, with these new communities, like I saw a Business Journal article, Hillsborough County approves 10,000 new homes in the Waimama area. And I'm like, maybe there's like a conversation with that developer who might not be from Florida, who has in their head like, oh, everybody wants a green lawn. Maybe rethink that at the onset. It's 10 times as hard to pull it up and replace it for that homeowner. No one's going to be incentivized to do that just to save a little water. But if they move into a home and it has that natural lawn without a bunch of grass everywhere, maybe over time that's an easier path.
And it's a beautiful landscape when it's done well and maintained. It's a beautiful landscape. And think about it, the less grass you have down, the less fertilizer you use, which can run off into our local rivers and streams and bay. So it even protects the bay community.
Yeah, 100%. There's an area up in the Panhandle, 30A. It's super nice. They've done a good job of preserving those estuaries and the pine trees, and you notice a lot of the homes. I don't think actually you might not even be allowed to use those types of grass to irrigate your yard. It's all like pine straws and saw palmettos. It's beautiful, and it's totally native and natural to the environment.
Yeah, there are a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different ways to design a different landscape that's well liked by residents and well received by the community. I think we have a couple pictures of some Florida Water Star homes. It doesn't mean it has to look like a botanical garden or be difficult to maintain, but there really has been a huge change from how homes were built several decades ago, as you were mentioning, to how they're built now. And now they're built with the irrigation system built right in. So everyone's going to start watering, whereas many years ago, the irrigation system didn't come with the home,
Right.
So that's had a big impact on driving up demands associated with new construction. Yeah, so these images show just a couple Florida Water Star homes. I mean, they really look quite normal, and
And you
it's
do
not
have
a
grass.
total
Yeah.
monoculture. Yeah, there can be grass to meet the standards. But what these homes do, because of the savings indoor and out, they use almost 50,000 gallons less per year with each new home.
Real Tampa on Instagram, David. Scroll down.
There it is.
Shout out Real Tampa. The thing with Real Tampa is he literally posts like 50 pictures a day. And so, oh yeah, he just posted it yesterday. Is not on the front page. Like, you got to scroll all the way down. So here's the picture right here. For those that are just listening, this is Columbus Drive. You're kind of looking towards the river, but look at the photo. I mean, look at the pine trees, look at the open space. And fast forward, this was 1926. So 100 years ago, you don't have all of the large trees, the grass that sucks up all that water, the irrigated landscapes. And to me, and this is obviously a personal opinion, it's super subjective, but I actually love this look. I think it's very, like, when I think of Florida, this is what I think of: these tall pine trees, sort of these rolling hills. You can even see the sand kind of on the street a little bit, the sandy soil. We were probably more arid. You would imagine back then, totally speculating, but maybe there was less like bugs back then. It's a little more arid. Maybe that's wishful thinking.
Yeah, it was always humid with a lot of bugs,
Yeah,
but it could have been a little
that's
different.
true. Yeah, you look at the old like history books, or you can even find like some postcards that were written of people that were here in like the 1800s, and it's like, this is a mosquito swamp.
They were getting eaten alive then too.
But it is interesting where you look at this photo and you don't see the landscape we have today. And this photo right here, there's no irrigation at all. This is all just totally natural. What would our water usage look like if no one had sprinklers at all and you just used plants that were totally natural to the area? You didn't even have to water your lawn necessarily. It was just natural. The rain would come and work itself out. I think in a community, a new development in Pasco or wherever this area extended and was natural in, I think a community with pine trees that looked like this would actually be really cool. And people moving here would probably love it. To me, it's a better long-term solution than continuing this like St. Augustine grass and this typical air quote like Florida development. It doesn't seem sustainable in my head. I mean, you describing these numbers in Pasco County, like, ooh, we're gonna need a lot of water in the future.
Gonna need a lot of water. Water's gonna cost more, and you're gonna put it on your yard.
And you're gonna put it on your yard. And then the water that goes on your yard refills those aquifers, right? Which probably takes forever. That's probably not a part of the solution.
Yeah, that's not really effectively getting down into the aquifer. The plants, the grass use some of it. Part of it evaporates back into the atmosphere. Some of it will soak into the aquifer, but that's a minor component, and it would have to go deep into the limestone before it could come back out.
Yeah. You got to think too about our storm drains, right? This photo, you are not going to have a lot of debris from these huge oak trees and other large species of tree getting into the storm drains and clogging the drains. You may have had an easier time with water runoff back then too, because the water would just naturally spill out into the river. Whereas today, you've got all these different trees that have debris, the leaves fall, the pollen, it kind of gunks up our system. I'm almost curious to know how we dealt with floodwaters and rainstorms and stuff like that back then. Plus, you have like the fertilizer component. These lawns, it's not just the water that they take, the fertilizer
And pesticides.
and pesticides and all the above, right? Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse, right? You come down here and you want this beautiful yard and you should have it, but it comes with challenges that might not be a big deal in the 70s when the real estate boom in the suburbs and all this stuff, and you get a few million people. Now you got 23 million people with many more millions on the way. At a certain point, we might have to kind of rethink this whole thing about how we grow and develop with landscaping.
That's a great statewide conversation.
Yeah. Are you hearing any, has you been in the business for over 30 years? But has the conversation shifted towards anything like we're talking about? Obviously, the challenge is different between, I think we said 15 or 16 million people to 23 million people. Has it shifted in kind of the ideas and some of the concepts we're talking about?
There are a lot of things being discussed. It's been hard to get statewide traction. Developments tend to come in and kind of do what's been done and what's marketable. HOAs have a lot of power and clout, and they can force people to water or replace St. Augustine if it gets to a certain discoloration. That conversation is happening. It just needs to gel so that we decide what we want to do for the future.
There are some exemplary communities that have, really embraced water conservation as an ethic to, go along with development. So I mentioned Florida Water Star. There's over 28 communities throughout the state. That's one technique. Another one, actually, if you look to the villages, they have a very interesting water management system there. And, that development has grown piece by piece, and they developed their water sources and management of it very carefully. So they did some experiments even with the residents. So they had some residents who had soil amendment mixed into their landscapes and had some help managing their water use, because they need to keep all of the residents' water use below a certain minimum because they have limited water resources to work with. But they wanted to keep growing. So the way that you can do that is make sure that every new home is, only using a certain amount of water so that they can have plenty of water for other people. So there's been a really active management system there, monitoring how people use their water, how it, translates over time, not just that first year when they learn about their new landscape that's very water efficient, but helping them manage it and keep their water use down over time.
It's a hell of a lot to manage too. I just looked up. It's 155,000 people estimated that live there now. It's the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States. And they're going to have their own challenges too with that, right? I mean, that is a lot of people to live in Central Florida. Now, it is a lot of retirees. They've got this golf cart lifestyle. It's sort of it's not your typical metropolitan area, but I would assume at some point they're going to need to draw water from somewhere and have huge infrastructure challenges. But as long as they keep on that path of being smart about how they develop and conserve, maybe they'll be okay.
And they have a very active education program to their residents about how to use water and how to only give the plants the water that they need. Because it's easy to accidentally just water the heck out of your landscape thinking you're helping the landscape out. But in fact, that tends to damage the landscape. It creates shallow roots and, weaker plants.
And timing has a lot to do with it too, right? Like I've turned my sprinklers on midday in the summer and it's like, oh my God, I had it running for 10 minutes and like half of it's already evaporated.
That's right. Yeah, no, you want to water during those cooler hours of the day, after 6, probably between 6 and 6, between
Is that
6 p.m.
ideal?
and 6 a.m.
Yeah. Couldn't fungus grow if it's too much water overnight though?
Absolutely. Fungus can grow if too much water is used. That's why you've got to get your controller set to water the right amount. And there's professionals who can help you with that. Or you can use the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. They'll help you right over the phone, just to get your controller set up properly.
And can a lot of the education be found on tampawaterwise.org?
Most of the educational resources are either through the member governments or the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program.
Got it.
So we coordinate and help support those efforts.
So let's go back to page 9 on that slide deck because I want to talk about these potential new projects. This map is really interesting. We kind of started on it earlier, but we got sidetracked for a little bit. So these are the new potential projects here, and you can kind of see what's the blue. There's these blue lines for people just listening that kind of connect everything it looks like together. Or is that piping, or what are we looking at here?
Those are the main pipelines that connect our supply sources with the treatment plants that we have all the way to the point of connection where our pipe ends and a member government pipe begins. That's where we transfer water to them. So this is our network.
And you were saying earlier that the city of Tampa has their own system. How does that connect with Tampa Bay Water?
They have a permit from the Hillsborough River. They can withdraw up to an average of 82 million gallons a day. And the thing is, it's a river system. So when we get into a drought year, they may not be able to withdraw 82. So we have interconnections with them. So when they get to a period where they need more water, we can supply the water that they need. Beyond 82 million gallons a day, we're here to plan for their future growth. And we have that unequivocal obligation to meet the water demands of all of our members from here on.
And so Tampa in particular, this municipality has kind of both, right? We have a city system, but also use Tampa Bay Water as sounds like almost like a backup system.
A backup for now and to meet growth in the future. And a huge benefit for a local government is they don't have to spend the resources to plan for water in the future. That's our job.
Yeah.
We can take care of that planning. We can take care of the infrastructure construction, management of the sources, and they simply take it at the end of our pipe, do whatever treatment they want for their particular system, and distribute to customers. So it's a big incentive for the local governments.
And is it an advantage for the city to have its own system? I mean, what if the city were to give up its system to Tampa Bay Water? Has that conversation ever happened?
That was part of that group of 18 conversation. The city was debating, should we be part of Tampa Bay Water, should we not? Because when we reformed, almost all the members had well fields. They sold all of them to Tampa Bay Water. So we now operate all of the system. The city did not want to get rid of the river reservoir. It was an efficient, economical use for them. And the region wanted to keep Tampa in as a regional player, and Tampa decided before the agreement was set that, yes, we want to be a player in Tampa Bay Water. We want to work with the other members, and we'll let Tampa Bay Water take care of our additional water need in the future.
So probably to build some resiliency for the city, right? Since we already have a system that's in place, why change that? Kind of like what you said about those early on wells. They're bought, they're paid for, they're working. That's the cheapest water you could get.
Right. And when we get into the heart of a really critical drought, the river flows drop. We have supplied as much as 40 million gallons of water a day to the city of Tampa.
Wow.
Because we don't want any of our members to run short of water. We can't allow that. So we go to great lengths to make sure that every one of our members has the water that they need. We just want people to and their customers to use only what is needed so we can defer those future capital expenses.
Sure. And when that happens, I mean, are we in a drought year now?
It's
Officially?
a dry year. September, we got 2.1 inches of rain across the region. We normally should get over 7. It was
Wow.
an exceptionally dry September.
Wow.
We'll probably be issuing a drought alert under our water shortage mitigation plan at the beginning of November, just highlighting for people that there's dry conditions and we're now heading into the dry season.
Right.
So it's really time to take a look at that irrigation system, make sure you're using only what you need. And this time of year, the plants are about to go dormant.
Right. And in this type of situation where you do have a drier year, you're going into dry season, the city only has the capacity to serve a certain amount of however many, I think you said 40 million gallons a day.
82 is what
82
they
a day. And then Tampa Bay Water comes in and makes up for it. Does that cost me more money if Tampa Bay Water has to come in and supply?
Very, very slightly. On those times when Tampa purchases water from us to make up any shortfall, you'll see I live in the city of Tampa. You'll see a Tampa Bay Water surcharge. I've never seen a surcharge more than $1 a month.
Oh, that's
So
it. So
it's
super nominal.
it's a super low additional fee.
So the customers pay a super low additional fee and the water keeps flowing and everybody's happy.
Yes.
Wow, sounds like an interesting system. And then Temple Terrace you described operates in a similar way. They have their own system and then have the
They don't have any interconnects right now. So they are on their own, but they've been able to, and they're pretty much limited in geographic area. They can't grow more.
Right.
As long as they manage what they have and they keep their wells in good shape, they should be sustainable.
And have they ever got into a situation where they were dangerously low in the last 25, 30 years?
Not
since
that I'm
Tampa Bay
aware
Water?
of.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess a lot of it has to do with population and, does the area have the capacity for more growth? Temple Terrace has been built out for a long time,
Yeah.
and maybe if the planning commission and the county and Temple Terrace got together and said, we want to build some, we want our own version of downtown, which I know they've actually talked about, maybe at that point, Tampa Bay Water would come into the conversation and say, hey, we can kind of add additional capacity there.
Or they would connect to the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County, and we would supply them through that local government. Just like Pinellas County has a lot of consecutive systems. The city of Bel Air, they serve their citizens. Pinellas County serves part of the city of Clearwater's need, and that water comes from us.
So let's talk about the future here. So these are potential new projects. Can you explain? I mean, we don't have to detail each one, but kind of give me an idea of what this is in relation to the statistic you said earlier about growth from now until 2055.
We, as I mentioned, we have that obligation to meet demand no matter what. So we start what we call a master water plan. Every 5 years, we inventory the population and demand forecast that's coming, so we know what to expect. We catalog all of our existing supplies, and we look at any difference, any shortfall in the future years. What we do then is to look at every conceivable water supply option for the future and analyze those in a series of steps. So we come to a very short list of what's probably the cream of the crop. This is what you see on the map. This is the projects that came out of our last master water plan update, and we're currently doing feasibility studies on each of these. There's a mix of additional groundwater, there's a mix of surface water, and additional desalinated seawater. So we're looking across the entire 3-county area. We're looking at all 3 possible water sources. And by the end of 2027, we'll go to our board and say, here's the cream of the crop. We recommend that you build this one or this combination of smaller projects to meet the demand for the year 2040. So it takes us about 10 years to go from a conceptual idea to actually turning on a water supply plant.
10 years.
But about 10 years. The design, the permitting, the construction, that's all of those pieces take years. So it's about 10 years in total.
Boy, I just can't imagine what it was like before Tampa Bay Water when you had these different entities fighting each other and at the same time planning. It's not like growth in Florida has really ever, I mean, it's gone back and forth, but that was probably a crisis at that time, trying to figure out how to plan for the future and get projects proposed and permitted.
Well, earlier I talked about the city of St. Pete had a water supply downtown that salted up. So their solution was to go up to Cosme, Odessa in northwest Hillsborough County and install a well field. And they had to construct a pipeline from there to downtown St. Petersburg because they didn't have any more water. So they went to Cosme, Odessa that turned on in 1931. Lake Park is their Section 21 well field, turned on in 1961. South Pasco well field, which is between Lutz Lake Fern Road and State Road 54, was their third well field. So they had to go out of their geographic county to find property to develop into a well field that wouldn't salt up. Hence, more of the water wars. You're taking my water.
Right. Taking away from Hillsborough County government, et cetera.
Right.
Wow. Tampa Bay Water plans $525 million in projects to meet growing demand. And so what is this here? October 14th. Oh, that's today. So very strategic. Very timely. And so a part of what you just described with these cream of the crop projects, that's what we're looking at here. $500 million in infrastructure.
Yes, the surface water treatment plant, which has become really part of the backbone of our system. Surface water allowed us to cut back groundwater with desal. We're expanding our plant. We're currently rated, we can produce up to 120 million gallons a day from this facility that's shown on screen. We're increasing the capacity of that by another 15 to 20 million per day. We're also building a pipeline to meet the demand in South Hillsborough County. And here you see all the projects listed that were on that map earlier. These are some of the individual projects that will boost yield. So we've got upcoming capital improvement projects to make sure our system is maintained and upgraded to serve demand. We're looking at surface water treatment plant and the South Hillsborough pipeline. We're building a 26-mile pipeline from our surface water treatment plant around Adamo Drive down to Balm. We're having to go through Brandon with a pipeline that's up to 60-inch in diameter.
Wow.
That's how we can get regional water, a mix of groundwater, surface water, desalinated seawater, to serve that growth in Hillsborough County South.
Yeah. I think we're all going to look back on Florida's growth and have a lot of questions about what we put where. When you look at that area of Hillsborough County, it's just this like really rural, untouched land. Why do those areas need tens and tens and tens of thousands of homes and Costco's and roads? And now you're describing infrastructure that's not cheap, to serve all those homes. It seems like not good planning to me, but that's not your job. Your job is, hey, that's where the customers are. Let's get them water.
We have no say in growth management. The members each year, we work with them on their demand projections. They tell us what they're going to need. It's our obligation to meet it.
Period. Well, I mean, $500 million is a lot to come. And then what's this I hear? I hear something about at the state level, you're not, and I think this has to do with the wastewater. You're not allowed to filter it and pour it into the bay anymore, even if it's super clean. It must be pumped up north. Explain this to me.
About 2 years ago, legislation passed, which was called Senate Bill 64.
Okay.
And we're working very hard in the state to clean up our bays and estuaries and the water that surrounds us. All of our water is interconnected. So by the year, I believe it's 2032, 2034, the state is prohibiting the discharge of treated wastewater into a river or stream or directly into the bay, a river or stream if it will flow to the bay or estuary or the Gulf or the Atlantic. So we're stopping that use. The state is working to promote the beneficial use of this reclaimed water. Some of our governments, Pasco County is a prime example. They work with those new residents, those new communities that are coming to say, we'll lay that purple pipe to you.
So required dates to meet. Now this is law, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So the municipalities, Tampa Bay Water, have this new law you have to abide by.
We don't have any wastewater, but all of our members do. We're clean water only. We're just drinking water, but all of our members have wastewater treatment facilities. They're the ones that have to meet this.
With this new legislation, will a conversation start to play out where maybe Tampa Bay Water does take on the regional role of figuring out what to do with wastewater?
As I mentioned, our master water plan looks at water sources.
Yeah.
Back when we reformed, the members said, the reclaimed water is ours, you just deal with clean water. But we have what we call developmental alternatives. They're projects that could yield drinking water, but the regulations aren't in place, public reception's not in place.
Right.
The members are working with us to say, we've got reclaimed water. Could you use it for some sort of a drinking water source in the future? We're looking at that in parallel to our master water plan to say maybe in 15 years, maybe in 20 years, that could be a water supply source. We'll study it until it's ready to go, but we've got a lot of work to do talking with the citizens of the area about what it can do and its safety and its protections.
Sure.
We have to get the regulations are now in place that allow the use of it, but it's a very new thing in our area. So we've got some time to work with this to see, can it be a supply source for the region in the future?
And there's 2 points that have to be met or surface water discharge must cease. Mm-hmm. The 2 qualifications are you submit a plan to FDEP for elimination of non-beneficial surface water discharges back in 2021, and then the DEP approved or denied that plan.
And all governments that have wastewater treatment plant in the state of Florida had to comply with those first 2 requirements.
And the idea that's sort of in the conversation with you guys, with the municipalities with wastewater, and then of course the public has to be bought into all of this always, right? Is that you guys are supplying the clean water to the people and the businesses, et cetera. What do you call them, by the way? Customers? What do you call the people that, is that kind of, I mean, that's basically what they are, right?
Yeah. Well, we have 6 we only have 6 customers. That's nice. They're just really big customers. But yeah, the people that use water in our region, they are our customers. They're the people that make up and support Tampa Bay Water.
And so you guys supply the clean water to your customers. The municipalities have this gray water, brown water, wastewater, all the after you flush your toilet, after the water goes down the drain, et cetera. And the conversation now is the municipalities can say, hey, we can give you back a portion of this, whatever that looks like. And then that would become a new source added to the list of aquifers. I know you guys get water from the bay, the river, et cetera. Using that water in the mix, filter it, clean it, and put it back into the system, essentially.
That's the concept that we're beginning to explore with the members. And Senate Bill 64 was part of the impetus for that.
Got it. If not that, what would the other solution be? How would you deal with some of the wastewater discharge?
Pasco County beneficially reuses theirs by treating it and sending it through purple pipes to put on people's yards. That's an effective, efficient way to use it. Unfortunately, they can't create enough reclaimed water to irrigate every yard that exists and will come. It pretty much, rule of thumb, it takes 4 new connections to make enough reclaimed water to serve 1 new home with outdoor irrigation. So there's a limitation. You can't meet everybody with it. Hillsborough County had a novel solution. With the Water Management District, they identified saltwater intrusion in the deep limestone aquifer in South Hillsborough County. So they're injecting their highly treated reclaimed water in a series of wells right on the coast that will help prevent and push that salt water back out over time. We've found a novel solution. When you do that, it creates a pressure in the aquifer inland as water's moving towards the coast. It begins to pile up a little bit. We can harvest some of that drinking water that's 5 miles inland. It's not what's being injected. It's fresh water in the aquifer. And that can become our new South Hillsborough well field that we're considering.
In the treated, very clean, I would assume, wastewater will stay in the aquifer, continue to filter, and maybe years later, again, become drinking water.
Potentially, where they're injecting
Probably
it.
butchering the science right there. But
You're pretty close. They're putting it down, and the aquifer will polish it, remove any remaining nutrients. The way the water flows, it comes from the middle of the state towards the coast, and then it keeps going. So the water they're injecting will be pushed out towards the bay, under St. Pete, towards the Gulf. So it probably will never be used again, but that increased pressure helps to move that saltwater wedge back out and not move any further inland.
And what kind of a time scale are we talking about from the center of the state?
Travel time?
Yeah, to get to the coast.
Oh, it's decades.
Decades.
But there's so much flushing through that we're still able to harvest 120 plus million gallons a day of groundwater that replenishes every day.
Wow.
The aquifer is that productive. If we understand what we can take and not take too much, it's a natural replenishment.
That sounds like a very good solution to comply with the state law, is injecting it in the ground. It filters through, creates the pressure, and then we use that natural filtered aquifer water.
That's a solution in South Hillsborough. It doesn't work everywhere, so all the local governments are getting creative with what can each of them do within their geography for projects that make sense.
With these different municipalities having to, I'm going to use the word scramble to try to figure this out. Because there's a time frame.
There's a very short time frame.
Wouldn't it make sense then to do some sort of a regional, solution towards the wastewater? If everyone's like, well, we're going to inject ours here, we want to inject yours here, Pinellas, you're going to put it on the golf courses. Like, doesn't it make sense to capture it all and maybe inject it in the middle of the state?
Or distribute it among the communities for those that can and will use that purple pipe irrigation to offset drinking water demand. It's a great discussion, and it has happened. It continues to happen, but someone's got to pay for the pipe that connects everything through a highly urbanized area. It's an economic scale at that point. It's just really expensive to move that much water around.
And so just continuing on that kind of line of required dates, we had those two qualifications by January 2028. After that, by January 2032, utility must fully implement the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're at currently is these different municipalities have submitted these discharge plans. They've been approved or denied, and they have to figure out essentially what the plan will be in, what would that be, 2 years?
Yeah, within 2 years, if their plan was not approved, they would need to stop any discharges. If their plan was approved, and a lot of the plans had multiple options to be chosen somewhere in the next few years, they have to fully implement their plan by January 1 of 32.
And fully stop discharges, what could that look like for a municipality that doesn't have a good plan in place?
Well, if it's a big utility, it's a lot of water.
Yeah.
The city of Tampa may have 40. They've asked us how can we help them as a region and use part of their reclaimed water. They have up to 40 or 50 million gallons per day because they collect everything and it goes to the the Tippin plant. No, I'm sorry, the Howard F. Curran plant right on Tampa Bay.
Yeah, right over here across from Davis Islands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That treats all of the city's collected wastewater, stormwater. So there's a discharge to the bay. They have to have this plan in place and implement it to stop that discharge.
And that obligation is on the city government. Is the county government involved in that as well in terms of like funding?
No, that's the city government responsibility. Hillsborough County is responsible for their individual wastewater treatment plants.
Boy, that's going to be a big expense for the city. and a huge conversation in the next few years to figure that out. Who pays for it? Where do the lines get run? So 40 million gallons a day currently on average goes back into the bay. And by January 1st, 2032, that's illegal.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a big lift for a lot of communities.
Well, good thing we have Tampa Bay Water on the front side of it, right? You imagine if that was not formed and you're trying to figure out both those things.
We're always here to help.
So Tampa Bay Water is a huge part of this solution, just the working relationship, because you guys have scientists and the infrastructure and a lot of capability to help assist these municipalities figure out what to do.
We actively work with all 6 of our members. We work with the Water Management District, with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We've built really strong working relationships with all the members and the state. We work with other municipalities, other utilities across the state, some across the country. We want to learn what others have done. We want them to learn from us, so we all work our systems as efficiently as possible. And this water conservation is a huge piece of what we do. It's actually even written into our master water plan. As Amelia says, every gallon we save is a gallon we don't have to go build.
And building it is insanely expensive.
It is. Each time we have to planning level estimate, 1 million gallons a day of new water supply is at least $10 to $15 million of capital expense.
And we use about 200 million a day.
Correct.
So if we were to redo all this infrastructure, or double our population, double our capacity, we would need to spend a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, my calculator doesn't go that high.
And so I was at the Glazier's Children Museum a few months ago with my family, and you guys have an exhibit there. And it's really, really cool because it describes some different processes of how do you take water from the Hillsborough River and have it clean enough on the backside for us to drink, right? Water from the bay, water from all these different sources. I have the release here. It was created in 2019, but we've mentioned desalination, right, is the name of the process where you take that bay water, ocean water, and turn it into clean drinking water, right, removing the salt. When you look at other areas around the country that have water issues, they're usually out west, right, out in the desert areas. California's notorious for having issues with the water. They're around water, right? They're around the oceans. Why do they have challenges? Is the technology insanely expensive to develop? Is the infrastructure expensive? Why can't they just draw it all from the ocean out there?
It's expensive. In relative terms, the cost to produce 1,000 gallons of groundwater is, say, $1 per 1,000 gallons. Surface water is about $2, $2.50. Desal is up to $4 per 1,000.
4 or 5 times more expensive.
Because you're pushing salty water through membranes at insanely high pressure to separate the water from the salt. And it's that power cost. It's not just the capital, it's the daily power cost to force the water through membranes that really escalates the cost.
And why do we have that tool in our tool belt if we have our aquifer, we have our rivers, the reservoir systems? Why do we need to have a portion of it come from salt water?
Sometimes it doesn't rain for long periods of time. We get into prolonged droughts. We have a desalination plant that is truly drought proof. It doesn't matter if it rains or not, that salt water is always there.
So it's about resiliency.
It is. It's a critical part of our infrastructure when we need it. And right now we're pretty much using it every day.
Right now we're using it every day. When you say surface waters, $2 or so for every 1,000, surface water meaning lakes, river water.
We only pull from rivers, not from lakes.
Why is that?
Lakes are very small, and their catchment area is so dependent on rainfall. If you think about a lake, even if it's 100 acres, its catchment area may be 125 acres. What falls there goes in the lake. The Hillsborough River, if you look at its entire watershed, it's massive.
Yeah.
So for the scope, if you pull water out of a lake, you might get a few thousand or tens of thousands of gallons a day. City of Tampa can pretty well count on 82 million a day. The Tampa Bypass Canal in the summer, when rivers are flowing, We have a permit to withdraw up to 258 million gallons a day from the bypass canal.
Just from the bypass canal.
And with summer rains, it replenishes itself.
Wow.
That's,
Thank God for that system, right? To have
the
right
Army
here in our
Corps
region.
did a fantastic job. It gave flood relief and it gave us a water supply.
David, pull up the satellite view of our region. Because what you're describing, like when people think of the Hillsborough River, of course it gets, narrow in certain areas. But when you look at, I think it's called the Green Swamp, right?
The Green Swamp is the headwaters for multiple rivers. See that big swath of green that
Look at
goes
that.
Hillsborough River State Park? That's natural swamplands. And what water falls in there hydrates those wetlands. They fill up, they pop off into the river channel, and it comes right down to Tampa Bay.
Wow. I mean, so what you're describing just from this one source has enough capacity to provide for the entire region. Although we don't get it for the entire region, right? There's different sources, but could if we needed it.
At times of the year, yes. And in the summer, we can't use all that water. That's when we store it in the reservoir for use when it's dry.
Wow. And so from this area, where is that huge reservoir we were talking about earlier in Lithia?
It's south. If you scroll down,
Right there.
you'll see it right there.
Holy smokes. So
that's an off-stream reservoir. A lot of places out west, they will dam up a river, and that becomes the reservoir. We went to this area south of Brandon, so it's literally a higher elevation. We have to pump the water into it. Gravity takes it back out to our surface water plant.
Wow.
So we only pump it once.
So zoom out a little bit, David. Let's see this whole system. I mean, so when you put your scientist hat on, which you wear every day, right? But you've got to look at this whole thing from like this big picture view. It's kind of fascinating, actually, how the whole thing works, which is why I'm glad you guys came today, and thank you for being here. So you all of this extra water essentially that you store up in the summer literally gets pumped from this area, maybe the Temple Terrace area, right? Down
Yes.
south, or where is it coming from?
Yes, it comes from there. Our pump station on the bypass canal it's several miles west of the interchange of I-4 and 275. It's over in East Tampa. The water comes from there, and it also comes from the Alafaya River, which is another critical part of our water supply. We have a permit there to harvest water. The Water Management District set a minimum flow. So the environment needs X million gallons a day at different times of the year. We can only take a percentage of that when the flows are higher. So the environment's always protected. We can harvest a little bit off the top, use it, or store it for a dry time.
And you said there's a lot of like flood mitigation factors in this whole system too, right? So last hurricane, who did we have on that was saying we had the Hillsborough River was higher in areas that has ever been recorded? Who was that? Someone from the county, right? I think it was their public works guy. Yeah. Just the unprecedented amount of water and rainfall we got last season.
From Debbie, Helene, and Milton gave us more water than I think we've ever recorded before. The Alafaya River, I looked up some flow data, especially from Milton, which was the real rainmaker after an already wet summer. The Alafaya River, at one of its main gauges around Lithia Springs Park, it was flowing between 6 and 8 billion gallons a day. And that was just from all that water from the multiple hurricanes, including Milton, and a wet summer, was all going to the bay.
Wow. And if we didn't have the Tampa Bypass Canal, the dam, right? If we didn't control the Hillsborough River, zoom out a little bit, David. When you see the scale of the Green Swamp, which I would assume, you have rain in this entire region that filters through, like you described earlier, and then comes down this narrow river. What are we talking about without any mitigation? Feet and
everything along the Hillsborough River or through Temple Terrace and the city of Tampa would have been submerged.
Wow.
And think of all the economic damage for that. The bypass canal was built by the Army Corps because of Hurricane Donna in 1960. They identified flood relief projects, and the Tampa Bypass Canal was the major project that they built here over the course of 10 or 12 years it took to build it.
Huge project.
Huge project, huge expense, worth every penny.
Yeah. Yeah, and you imagine today if we had to do infrastructure work like that. First of all, is it even possible? Just the different ownership of real estate, the way everything's laid out. It tells you that it's so important to plan for the future. I mean, back then, first of all, could our local governments even take on a project like that? Probably cost an unbelievable amount of money without federal support.
I'd have to fact check the numbers, but the number about $150 million in 1960s dollars is, I think, what it cost to build the bypass canal, or maybe even more. What would that cost today?
Probably billions, right? If we were just
Billions
to guess.
easily.
Wow.
Plus the property costs.
It's amazing. It's incredible, really. For Tampa Bay Water at this point, you guys sound like you're very forward thinking. You said there's a study you did that looks out to 2055. You're planning stuff out in the southeastern Hillsborough County, Pasco County, all the above. And then at an individual level, people's education. We're going to wrap this thing up, but where could people go? Again, let's reiterate it so they can either get information or some of these basically grant money given to individuals and businesses. It's really, really a great program.
Yeah, so that's at tampabaywaterwise.org. And then, sort of the education and landscape assistance piece comes from the Florida Friendly Landscaping programs in each of the 3 counties, Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough.
And then if there's a developer listening or someone looking to do a new project that's going to be bringing some apartments or mixed use or whatever it may be, and they can look at this program to potentially get some funding, how can they reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so I would be a good first point of contact. So they can catch me, Amelia Brown, at abrown@tampabaywater.org. There is some interest. We've seen a sort of a new trend in Pinellas County. There's some interest from developers in integrating gray water systems into new multifamily construction. So what that means is that within the building, they are taking water from showers and sinks in the bathrooms and then treating it, cleaning it, and reusing it to flush toilets in that same apartment building. And our program is helping to fund some of those projects since it does have a really measurable reduction in water use. So I think there are really a lot of innovative ways that developers and builders can, begin to reduce the water footprint of every new development.
Yeah, you've seen in some of the larger developments here around this area and kind of the downtown core is centralizing the air conditioning, right? Where you have this centralized water chiller. I wonder if there's a project maybe I'm unaware of that has some sort of a gray water system, like for an entire development that's just this closed circuit for that particular 7,000, 10,000 residents and business area. Have you guys discussed anything like that at a larger scale?
I'm not familiar with sort of that large of a scale.
Yeah.
Typically, it's either done, within a building, like an apartment building
Sure.
or a single-family home.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be interesting if some of these large developments, I mean, it's interesting we have the opportunity in this city. St. Petersburg has a big opportunity with the gas plant district, 80-something acres of development. It'd be interesting to incorporate like centralized air conditioning and maybe use that chilled water for other things or capture the gray water, like rethink how we do these urban developments rather than the traditional way where you just straight up hook it up, especially given the law we talked about.
Yeah, there's certainly the opportunity for some of these more, I think you might even call it a decentralized water system because it's sort of off from the main water utility. But whether you're talking about rainwater capture or large, underground storage for gray water that's treated, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to do things differently.
Yeah, and you guys sound really dynamic, meaning someone could kind of contact you and be like, here's what we're thinking, and you'll work through it. Right.
Yeah, if it can save water, we want to help. And I'm grateful for all the support that our member governments play too. I mean, they really actively contribute to the Tampa Bay Waterwise Conservation Program and have generally been very supportive to, try out some new technologies and new ways of saving water.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you both so much for coming on today. This was fascinating.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
It's what we do. We enjoy talking about it.
Amazing. And then one last time, couple different websites. Tampa Bay, what is it? TampaBayWater.org.org is the organization here today. And you guys have a ton of stuff on here. There's conservation, water saving tips,
Our documentary,
Yeah, let's give a shout out to the documentary. Lightning, what's the name of it?
Lightning in a Bottle.
Lightning in a Bottle. And people can probably find that on TampaBayWater.org.
Yes.
And then we also have WaterWise, right? So TampaBayWaterWise.org. There's rebate programs, hotel, motel rebates, commercial, residential, about the program. There's both of these websites have a ton of different information, including a contact us form. And I think it's interesting. Why is the address in California, Sacramento?
I'm the only person at Tampa Bay Water who manages this program, which reaches 2.6 million people.
Oh.
So in order to process those rebates and do some of the other key functions, we hired a third-party rebate processor who happens to be located in California.
Oh my gosh, you need outside help.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
That'd be a lot of rebates to look at every day.
Flood her email. I'm sure the more the better, right? You want
we want
get the info out.
It takes a team to review all the submissions. So
100%. Well, listen, thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody. See you next week.